Great. So thank you very much for having me. I've been asked to speak about doing humanitarianism differently, and in the next 6 minutes and 50 odd seconds, I hope to provide an overview of some of the things that IRC is doing to become more adaptive. Secondly, I'll explore some of the things that are holding us back. And then finally, I hope to share a live example of the ways we're seeking to challenge the status quo. So at IRC, we've started an organisational change process which seeks to move us from monitoring of action to monitoring for action, with the intent of being able to course correct and become more iterative in the way that we implement. We've also invested in context analysis tools and, for example, social network analysis to help our field teams be able to better analyse local contextual dynamics and programme accordingly. We've established a collaboration with Mercy Corps and have researched, innovated and promoted adaptive practice. And there's an adapting aid report that we published over the summer. And finally, we're currently working with CEDA to test some adaptive donor and implementing agency arrangements. And I'll share a live example of one of those in a few moments. So, what's holding us back? Well, it's a truism to say that we work in uncertain and volatile contexts. And yet we often design programs as with an overconfidence that if we plan everything out and implement to that plan, then our programs will be effective, irrespective of changes in context. So you'll no doubt recognise the slide behind me. What follows is not an attack on our beloved log frame, but I hope to use this to explore some of the dynamics, some of the incentives at play. So the conceptual simplicity of the log frame has resulted in it being the number one tool in the sector. It drives program design, monitoring to a certain extent, and implementation. But there are some problems. You well know the intervention logic behind, or the causal logic behind the log frame. If we implement these activities and these assumptions hold true, then we'll deliver these outputs. So foundational to the log frame is this column here, the assumptions column. The assumptions column is often that which gets neglected. It's the one which we come back to after a cup of tea if we've got time. Moreover, assumptions are often subject to optimism bias that proposal processes can engender. They can also encourage static or status quo projections of how the situation may unfold. The Ministry of Health staff will be paid on time. There will be uninterrupted access to project sites. I'm sure you recognise these assumptions, but they're often fail to provide a realistic interpretation of the reality. Now, this is really important because if our assumptions are wrong or are missing, then the causality is in jeopardy. So the proposal development process can also lead us to underplay the messiness of reality, to propose singular solutions, and then sell them as though they're the only way to bring about change, rather than one of a number of different pathways. USAID has recognised that development is not static and rarely linear, yet often our current programme models assume they are. We should allow projects to adjust in response to learning and contextual challenges. When it comes to implementation, there's often a reluctance to change or an agility to change, and we can easily fall foul of log frame tunnel vision, where we implement plans rigidly even when the context means they're redundant. So I'd like to share with you one example of how we're trying to challenge this. CEDA back in 2005 published a great report entitled The Use and Abuse of the Log Frame, and it concluded by saying, we must look for an approach which enables some of the logic of the log frame to remain, but avoids becoming an unwieldy, rigid instrument which locks actors into inappropriate courses of action. So this is our adapt frame. It's a somewhat delayed response to this plea. You'll see that we've done away with the assumptions column altogether, and instead are seeking to base program design on the drivers of change and an estimation of different trajectories, positive most likely and negative. We've built into this adapt frame pre-agreed flexibility with the donors that we're working with to adapt implementation plans based on changes to context and need. So how does it work? Well, first of all, you need to identify the drivers of change and also estimate what the possible trajectories may be. Now, this is not an attempt to predict the future. Pollsters have recently been told to shelve their crystal balls. It's more an attempt to estimate what might happen and explore the uncertainty of the context. Secondly, we seek to analyse the probability of each trajectory, and then thirdly, look at the implications of different trajectories and consider how we could respond to each differently. So ADAPT frame encourages teams to design their intervention based on the most likely trajectory for the context, but to infuse their design in different aspects of what the positive trajectory or a negative trajectory might look like. For example, our Niger team, when they estimated there might be some floods over the course of the project implementation period, built in a cholera contingency stock. Whereas our Nigeria team, who are also testing this, thought that the Joint Forces operation in Borno might increase some humanitarian access, and that would lead them to greater opportunity to access clients. And they built in needs assessments and mobile health clinics as one possible response. So the intent behind ADAPT frame is to offer different options for operating in challenging and changing contexts, different pathways for achieving identified outcomes, and also structured flexibility about how we implement. Monitoring and learning are central to how decisions are made under this process, with contextual indicators supplementing our project effectiveness indicators and regular reviews providing an opportunity for reflection. So, to sum up, it's hoped that ADAPT frame can help project teams to better analyse the dynamics of a particular situation, anticipate how these may evolve, and also be sufficiently agile to adapt to changes in context and need. Of course, ADAPT frame is still under development. It's not the answer, but we hope it may provide a challenge to some of the underlying incentives and dynamics that are holding us back. Thank you.